The air in the San Diego Convention Center buzzed with that electric hum you only get at a big tech conference, a mix of caffeine, ambition, and the faint hum of LED lights overhead. It was April 2025, and I, Ethan Carter, was slouched in a cushy chair halfway back in the auditorium, trying to blend into the crowd of suits and Silicon Valley hopefuls. At 38, with $70 billion to my name, I was used to being the guy everyone noticed, the tech mogul who turned a late-night coding obsession into an empire. But tonight, I just wanted to be invisible. My gray Armani suit was sharp, but understated, my Rolex tucked under my sleeve, and my phone was buzzing non-stop with acquisition reports I pretended to care about. I wasn't here for the usual schmoozing or deal-making. I was here for her, Doctor. Lena Harper stood on the stage, her voice cutting through the chatter like a blade through butter. She wasn't loud or showy. Hell, she didn't need to be. In a simple black dress that hugged her frame just enough to turn heads, she owned that stage like it was her damn living room. Her hair was pulled back in a tight bun, a few strands escaping like they had a mind of their own, and her dark eyes sparkled under the spotlight as she talked about VitalSync, her AI startup. Imagine a world where rural clinics don't just survive, they thrive, she said, her tone steady but alive with conviction. Our AI doesn't replace doctors. It gives them back time to actually see their patients. The crowd leaned in, hooked. So did I. I'd been watching Lena for 3 years now. Not in a creepy way, okay? More like a silent investor, a ghost in the machine of her success. Through shell companies like Horizon Peak and Blue Wave, I'd funneled millions into VitalSync, helping her turn a scrappy idea into a game changer for healthcare. She didn't know it was me. Nobody did, and that was the point. In a world where my name opened doors and shut down conversations, Lena was the one person who didn't see me coming. Until tonight. The giant screen behind her flickered, and my stomach dropped. A headline from TechCrunch blasted across it in bold white letters. Ethan Carter, the billionaire phantom behind VitalSync's rise. The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, a few claps from the back. My phone buzzed again, and I glanced down to see a text from Mia Torres, my assistant. "What the hell's going on, boss?" I didn't have an answer. Cameras swiveled toward me, flashes popping like gunfire, and I felt the heat crawl up my neck. 3 years of staying under the radar, gone in a split second. I wanted to sink into the floor, but there was no escaping this. Lena froze for half a heartbeat, her eyes darting to the screen. Then she did something I didn't expect. She smiled. Not a big fake grin, but a small, curious one, like she'd just figured out a puzzle. She leaned into the mic, her voice calm as ever. "Well, looks like we've got some unexpected news tonight," she said, and the crowd chuckled nervously. "Mr. Carter, I think it's time we had a chat. Why don't you come up here?" The air sucked out of my lungs. Every head in the room turned to me, and I could feel the weight of their stares. Investors, reporters, tech bros who'd kill for a headline. My legs moved before my brain caught up, and I stood, smoothing my jacket like it had somehow saved me. The walk to the stage felt like a mile, my dress shoes clicking against the polished floor, the scent of Starbucks, an expensive cologne hanging in the air. Lena watched me approach, her expression unreadable, but not hostile. Up close, she was even more striking, the way the light caught the curve of her jaw, the faint lavender scent drifting off her. I swallowed hard. "Thanks for the invite," I said, forcing a grin as I stepped up beside her. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. "I'm, not great at improv speeches." She tilted her head, studying me like I was one of her AI models. "No need for a speech," she said. "I just want to know why a guy like you's been playing hide-and-seek with my company for 3 years. The crowd laughed again, louder this time,
and I felt my face burn. She wasn't mad, at least she didn't sound it, but those eyes of hers, they saw right through me, and for the first time in years I didn't know what to say.
"Let's take this off stage," I mumbled, glancing at the sea of phones recording us. She nodded, and we stepped away from the mic as the moderator jumped in to smooth things over. The backstage hallway was quieter, just the hum of AC and the distant chatter filtering through. Lena crossed her arms, leaning against a wall covered in event posters. Her dress shifted slightly, and I had to force my eyes up to her face. This wasn't the time to get distracted. "So," she started, her tone casual but pointed, "you're the guy behind Horizon Peak? Blue Wave too, I'm guessing?" I shoved my hands in my pockets, nodding. "Yeah, guilty as charged." She didn't flinch, didn't gush like most people did when they realized who I was. "I don't get it," she said. "You're Ethan Carter. You could have walked in, flashed your name, and owned half my board by now. Why the cloak and dagger stuff?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. "How do you explain something you barely understand yourself?" "It's complicated," I said finally. "Can we talk somewhere else? Away from the circus?" She raised an eyebrow, then shrugged. "Fine. My hotel's across the street. We'll grab a coffee and figure this out." She turned and started walking, not waiting to see if I'd follow. I did, of course. I always did. The night air hit us as we stepped outside, salty from the Pacific breeze rolling in off the bay. San Diego's downtown glowed with neon signs and palm trees swaying lazily, the kind of vibe that screamed California cool. We crossed to the Marriott, her heels clicking against the pavement, my heart still pounding from that damn headline. Inside the lobby, she ordered a black coffee from the barista, and I grabbed a whiskey. I needed something stronger than caffeine for this. We slid into a booth by the window, the city lights painting streaks across the glass. "Okay, Mr. Carter," she said, stirring her coffee with a little wooden stick. "Spill it. What's your deal?" I took a sip of my drink, the burn steadying me. "It's Ethan," I said. "And it started 3 years ago at a conference in Austin. You were up there talking about saving lives with AI, and I couldn't look away." Her eyes narrowed slightly, but she didn't interrupt. "I've spent 15 years being the guy everyone watches, Lena. The one they bow to or stab in the back. But you didn't even know I existed. And that felt real." She leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, and I couldn't help noticing how the hem of her dress slid up just a fraction. "So you turned my startup into your personal pet project?" she asked, her tone dry but not angry. "Not like that," I said quickly. "I didn't want to control you. I just wanted to see you win, on your terms, not mine." She studied me for a long moment, her fingers tapping the side of her cup. Then she sighed. "You're weird, Ethan. But I'll give you this. Whatever you did, it worked. We've saved lives because of those investments. So, thanks, I guess." I smirked. "You're welcome, I guess." She smiled, a real one this time, and it hit me like a punch. 3 years of watching from the shadows, and now here I was, sitting across from her, no more secrets between us, or so I thought. The truth was, this was just the start of a story I never saw coming. A wild ride that'd flip everything I thought I knew about power, purpose, and what it means to really be seen. As we sat there, the hum of the hotel bar fading into the background, I realized I had no idea where this was going. But for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to find out. "Hey, if you're hooked on how a billionaire like me ended up spilling his guts to a woman who didn't even know my name 3 hours ago, stick around. Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Tell me what you think's coming next. This is just the beginning, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's ahead." 3 years ago, I wasn't sitting across from Lena Harper in a San Diego hotel bar, spilling my guts over a glass of whiskey. Nope. I was in Austin, Texas, at some mid-tier tech conference called South by Southwest, SXSW to the hipsters who lived for this stuff. It was September 2022, humid as hell, and the city smelled like barbecue, cheap beer, and ambition. I was 35, worth $70 billion, and bored out of my mind. My company, Carter Tech, had just closed a deal to buy out a competitor for a cool 9 figures, and I was riding high, the golden boy of Silicon Valley who could do no wrong. Boardrooms went quiet when I walked in. CEOs sweated through their pitches, and my name was a currency all its own. Life was good. Too good, maybe. I'd almost skipped the conference. Another parade of startups begging for my money? Pass. But my assistant, Mia Torres, had insisted. "You need to get out of New York, boss," she'd said, shoving the itinerary in my face. "Go drink some Shinerbach and pretend you're human for a day." So there I was, sprawled in a folding chair at the Hilton Austin, sipping a lukewarm IPA, and scrolling through acquisition reports on my phone. The room was packed with tech bros in hoodies and venture capitalists in blazers, all buzzing about the next big thing. I barely listened to the pitches, some kid droning about blockchain, a woman hyping up a fitness app. Same old, same old. Then she walked on stage. Dr. Lena Harper didn't strut or flash a megawatt smile like most presenters. She just appeared, like she'd been there all along and we were the ones late to the party. Her black dress was simple but sharp, clinging just enough to hint at the shape beneath without screaming for attention. Her hair was up in that signature bun, a little messy in a way that made you wonder if she'd just rolled out of a lab. She adjusted the mic, cleared her throat, and started talking. "Picture this," she said, her voice low and steady, like she was letting us in on a secret. A clinic in rural West Texas, understaffed, overstretched. A patient walks in with chest pain, and the doctor's got 5 minutes to figure it out. Now imagine an AI that flags a heart attack before it happens, not to replace that doctor, but to give them a fighting chance. I looked up from my phone. The room went quiet, the kind of quiet that happens when someone's saying something real. Lena wasn't selling hype. She was selling hope, backed by data and a fire in her eyes that hit me square in the chest. She clicked through slides, neural networks, predictive models, stats about underserved communities. But it wasn't the tech that got me. It was her. The way she stood there, shoulders back, not begging for applause or kissing up to the money in the room. She didn't care who was listening. She cared about the work. I shifted in my seat, the plastic creaking under me. The guy next to me, some VC with a man bun, whispered to his buddy, "She's got something, huh?" I wanted to tell him to shut up, but I didn't. I just kept watching. Lena finished her pitch, and the moderator opened the floor for questions. My hand shot up before I could stop it. Me, Ethan Carter, the guy who never asked questions at these things. She pointed at me, her gaze locking onto mine for a split second. No flicker of recognition, no nervous tick. To her, I was just another face. "How do you make sure your AI doesn't screw up?" I asked, leaning forward. "False positives, bad calls. How do you keep it from doing more harm than good?" She didn't miss a beat. "We don't promise perfection, sorry, who are you?" she said, squinting slightly. The crowd chuckled, and I felt my face heat up. "We promise progress. Every algorithm gets tested against real-world data, thousands of cases, peer-reviewed. If it fails, we fix it. Simple as that." Simple as that. No bullshit, no buzzwords. I nodded, sinking back into my chair as she moved on to the next question. But I couldn't shake her. That night, back in my suite at the Four Seasons, I poured myself a bourbon and fired up my laptop. The city skyline glittered outside, 6th Street alive with music and drunk college kids. But I wasn't there for the party. I dug into Lena Harper, not in a stalker way, just curious. "Okay, maybe a little obsessed. She was a neurologist from Detroit, raised in a working-class neighborhood where the hospital was more morgue than lifeline. She taught herself to code during graveyard shifts, hunched over a laptop between patient rounds, driven by the deaths she couldn't stop. VitalSync wasn't her first rodeo. She'd built prototypes in med school, scrapped them when they didn't work, started over. No TED Talks, no Instagram flexing, just a quiet grind most of the tech world hadn't noticed yet. I found a grainy photo of her from a medical journal, standing in scrubs, arms crossed, that same fire in her eyes. Something about her stuck with me, a rawness I hadn't seen in years. I called Mia the next morning, still half asleep with bourbon on my breath. "Hey, pull everything you can on VitalSync," I said, pacing the room in my boxers. "Financials, contracts, the works." She yawned through the phone. "You're up early, boss. What's this about? Another acquisition?" "Nah," I said. "Just research. And set up a shell company. Call it Horizon Peak. I want to move some money." "Money for what?" she asked, suspicious now. "For them," I said. "But keep my name out of it." Mia groaned. "Ethan, what are you up to? You're acting like a kid with a crush." "Maybe I am," I shot back, grinning despite myself. "Just do it, okay?" She did. Over the next few weeks, Horizon Peak became VitalSync's guardian angel. A $5 million investment here, a contract nudge there, all under the radar. My financial advisors thought I was nuts, spreading cash through dummy entities instead of slapping my name on a board seat. "You could own this company outright," one of them argued during a call, his voice crackling from a yacht somewhere off Miami. "Why play games?" "Because it's not a game," I said, cutting E off. "It's something else." "What exactly?" I didn't have a word for it yet. All I knew was that every time VitalSync landed a new deal, a hospital in Oklahoma, a grant from the NIH, I'd sit in my Manhattan penthouse, watching the numbers tick up on my screen, a stupid grin on my face. Lena never took the spotlight, always crediting her team in those dry, data-heavy press releases. She didn't know I was there, pulling strings from the shadows, and that was how I liked it. In a world where everyone kissed my ass or stabbed my back, she was a closed door I didn't want to kick down. Her not knowing me? That was the most real thing I'd felt in years, but I wasn't the only one watching. Somewhere out there, Zoe Kim, a scrappy reporter from Wired, was sipping her third Pete's coffee of the day in a cluttered San Francisco office, staring at a spreadsheet. She'd caught a whiff of something odd. Those perfectly timed investments into VitalSync, the shell companies with no clear owner. "Nobody gets this lucky," she muttered to herself, circling Horizon Peak's name in red ink. She didn't know it yet, but she was about to turn my little secret into a full-blown storm. Back in New York, I leaned back in my leather chair, the city humming below me, oblivious to the fact that my quiet obsession was already starting to unravel. 3 years sounded like a long time to hide, but in this game, it was nothing. A year had passed since that sweaty September day in Austin, and I'd turned my little side gig of funding VitalSync into a full-blown shadow operation. By September 2023, Lena Harper's startup wasn't just a blip on the radar anymore. It was a quiet force, rolling out AI diagnostics in hospitals from Boise to Baton Rouge. I'd pumped another $10 million into it through Blue Wave and a new shell company, Dawn Pulse, watching from my penthouse as her team's peer-reviewed papers stacked up like trophies. Every morning, I'd check their numbers over coffee, not my own stock, hers, like some Wall Street geek obsessed with a penny stock. It wasn't about the money. It was about her. That's how I ended up in Miami, Florida, at a glitzy charity gala thrown by some healthcare foundation I didn't care to remember. The event was on a rooftop overlooking South Beach, the kind of place where the air smelled like salt sunscreen, and money. It was a sticky 85 degrees, even at night, and the crowd was a mix of pharma execs in linen suits, tech bros in overpriced sneakers, and a few doctors who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. I was there in a navy blazer, no tie, nursing a mojito and trying to stay out of the spotlight. The live band played a lazy salsa beat, and the skyline glittered with high-rises and the distant pulse of Ocean Drive. Then I saw her. Lena was across the rooftop, deep in conversation with a gray-haired investor, her black silk dress catching the light like liquid midnight. It wasn't flashy, never was with her, but the way it draped over her shoulders and skimmed her hips made my throat go dry. She laughed at something the guy said, a real laugh that carried over the music, and I had to look away before I did something stupid, like stare too long. She was maybe 10 feet from me, close enough that I could smell the faint citrus of her perfume when the breeze shifted. 3 years of boardroom power plays, and here I was, a grown man hiding behind a potted palm like a nervous kid at prom. My best friend, Ryan Brooks, wasn't helping. He'd flown down from Chicago for the weekend, mostly to drink my booze and bust my chops about my expensive hobby, as he called it. He was 3 rum and cokes deep, his tie loose, when he spotted Lena. "Holy hell, Ethan," he slurred, clapping me on the shoulder hard enough to spill my drink. "That's her, right? The doc you're obsessed with? She's hotter in person." "Keep your voice down," I hissed, shoving him toward the bar. "And I'm not obsessed." "Sure you're not," he said, grinning like an idiot. "You've been playing Batman for a year, dropping cash on her like it's candy. Why not just say hi? She's right there." "Because," I said through gritted teeth, "it's not like that." Ryan rolled his eyes, stumbling a little as he grabbed another drink. "Whatever, man. You're wasting a perfectly good billionaire vibe. Watch this." Before I could stop him, he started weaving through the crowd toward Lena, his glass sloshing. Panic hit me like a freight train. I grabbed his arm, yanking him back just as he opened his mouth. "Hey, Lena, there's someone you should—" "Sorry," I cut in, loud enough to draw a few stares. "Emergency call. Gotta take this." I fumbled with my phone, pretending to answer it, and dragged Ryan toward the edge of the roof. "What the hell, man?" I snapped once we were clear. "You trying to blow this up?" He laughed, swaying. "Relax, dude. She'd probably thank you. You're her fairy godmother with a fat bank account." I rubbed my temples, the salsa beat pounding in my skull. "Just stay here, and don't talk to anyone, okay?" Ryan shrugged, already distracted by a tray of shrimp skewers. I glanced back at Lena. She hadn't noticed the chaos, still chatting away, her silhouette framed by the Miami skyline. Close call number 1. But I wasn't the only one dancing around her that night. Out in San Francisco, Zoe Kim was hunched over her desk at Wired, the glow of her laptop casting shadows on a wall plastered with sticky notes. She'd been digging into VitalSync for months, chasing a hunch about those lucky investments. Her office smelled like stale coffee and printer ink, a half-eaten burrito from Chipotle sitting forgotten beside her. She'd just scored an interview with Dr. Arjun Desai, a slick-talking rival of Lena's, who ran a flashy AI outfit called Health Pulse. They'd met at a noisy bar in the Mission District, the kind with $15 cocktails and too many techies. "So, Arjun," Zoe said, recorder on, pen tapping her notebook. "VitalSync's killing it lately. New contracts, big grants. What's your take?" Arjun smirked, swirling his gin and tonic. "They're good, I'll give 'em that. Lena's a brainiac. We went to med school together, you know, but nobody climbs that fast without a boost. Those investments? Too perfect. Someone's pulling strings." "Someone like who?" Zoe pressed, leaning in. He shrugged, but his eyes gleamed. "Dunno, but I'd bet my Tesla it's a big fish. Maybe someone who likes playing puppet master." Zoe scribbled that down, her pulse quickening. Back at her desk, she cross-referenced Horizon Peak and Blue Wave against public records. Nothing solid yet, but the patterns were there. Whispering Ethan Carter's name, even if she couldn't prove it. She circled his initials in red Sharpie, muttering, "Gotcha, mystery man." Meanwhile, back in Miami, I was oblivious to Zoe's hunt. I'd slipped into a safer orbit, chatting up some pharma guy about supply chains while keeping Lena in my peripheral. She moved through the crowd like she belonged there but didn't need it, shaking hands, nodding at pitches, never lingering too long. At one point, she brushed past me, close enough that her arm grazed mine. I froze, catching a whiff of that citrus scent again, my brain short-circuiting for a second. She didn't even glance my way, just kept walking, her heels clicking against the tile, invisible again. I hated how much I loved it. The night wore on, the mojitos flowing, the band switching to a slower rumba. Ryan, now thoroughly trashed, slumped against the bar, and I figured it was time to bail. But as I headed for the exit, I overheard Lena talking to a woman in a sequined dress. "We've got offers," she was saying, her voice low. "Big ones, 9 figures from some of the giants. But VitalSync's not for sale, not yet." My gut twisted. 9 figures? That meant the sharks were circling. Google, Amazon, maybe even my own rivals at Carter Tech. I'd kept her afloat, but now the game was shifting. She'd built something real, something worth billions, and I wasn't the only one who'd noticed. The stakes were higher now, and my little shadow dance was starting to feel like a tightrope walk. I stepped into the elevator, the Miami heat clinging to my skin, and leaned against the wall as the doors slid shut. Ryan mumbled something incoherent beside me, but I barely heard him. My mind was on Lena, that laugh, that dress, the way she didn't need me or anyone to keep climbing. I'd spent a year thinking I could stay in the dark forever, pulling levers from a distance. But tonight, standing 10 feet from her, dodging Ryan's drunk ass, I realized something. You can't hide forever when the thing you're hiding from keeps getting bigger. Back in San Francisco, Zoe Kim shut her laptop, a grin tugging at her lips. She didn't have the full picture yet, but she was close. Too close. And I had no idea the clock was already ticking. By mid-2024, VitalSync wasn't just a rising star anymore. It was a damn supernova. Lena Harper had taken her AI from small-town clinics to major hospitals, crunching data to spot rare diseases and optimize treatments like something out of a sci-fi movie. I'd funneled another $15 million through Dawn Pulse and a new shell, NovaCore, watching her empire grow from my perch in New York. Quarterly reports landed in my inbox like clockwork, dry as hell, but beautiful in their own way. Numbers ticking up, lives saved, no fanfare. Lena's name started popping up in Forbes and Stat, dubbed the quiet queen of healthcare AI, though she never leaned into the hype. I'd catch myself smiling at my desk, a $70 billion man grinning over someone else's success. Pathetic, maybe, but it felt good. Then the shit hit the fan. It started in Chicago, late August. A patient at Northwestern Memorial, some 60-year-old guy with a bad ticker, died after VitalSync's AI flagged him as low risk. The hospital pointed fingers, the family sued, and the media smelled blood. AI healthcare fail, VitalSync under fire, blared the Chicago Tribune. Twitter lit up with armchair experts crying, "Killer algorithm," and Lena's startup went from golden child to punching bag overnight. I was in my Manhattan office when the news broke, staring at my dual monitors, one with CNN's live feed, the other with VitalSync's plummeting public trust metrics. My coffee went cold in my hand. Lena didn't flinch. She called a press conference in Palo Alto, standing in front of a plain white wall in that black dress of hers, hair up, no makeup, like she'd just walked out of a lab. "We're opening our code," she said, voice steady as steel. "Every line, every model, it's all going up for peer review. If there's a flaw, we'll find it. If we messed up, we'll own it. The room went quiet, reporters scribbling like mad. I watched the live stream, my heart pounding. Most CEOs would have ducked or spun some PR bullshit, but not her. She stepped into the fire, and damn if it didn't make me admire her more. But I couldn't just sit there. Through my network, a few well-placed calls to hacker buddies from my coding days, I dug into the data breach rumors swirling around the case. It didn't take long to sniff out the truth. The error wasn't an accident. Someone had tampered with VitalSync's system, tweaking the algorithm to spit out a bad call, and the trail led straight to Dr. Arjun Desai, Lena's old med school rival. His outfit, Health Pulse, had been losing ground to VitalSync for months, and this smelled like sabotage, dirty, desperate, and way too personal. I could have blown the whistle right then, handed Lena the proof on a silver platter, but that'd mean stepping out of the shadows, and I wasn't ready. Instead, I played ghost. I funneled the evidence, encrypted logs, IP traces, to VitalSync's CTO through an anonymous drop, letting them connect the dots. Within days, Lena's team traced the hack, patched the flaw, and released a statement pinning the blame on external interference. Arjun denied it, of course, all slick smiles and lawyer speak, but the damage to Health Pulse was done. VitalSync came out stronger, their transparency turning a PR nightmare into a masterclass in accountability. I watched it unfold from my penthouse, the city skyline glowing outside, a glass of bourbon in my hand. Crisis averted. For now. Meanwhile, Zoe Kim was closing in. She'd moved from hunches to hard leads, piecing together my shell companies like a jigsaw puzzle. Her latest Wired piece, The Invisible Hand Behind VitalSync, didn't name me, but it was close enough to make me sweat. She'd interviewed Arjun again, who'd dropped more hints. Whoever's bankrolling Lena's got deep pockets and a deeper ego. Zoe was relentless, fueled by caffeine and a nose for a scoop. I caught wind of her digging through a tip from Mia, who'd overheard a reporter sniffing around Carter Tech's financials. "She's good, boss," Mia warned over the phone. "You sure you can keep this up?" "Nope," I said, staring out at the Hudson. "But I'll figure it out." Then came Seattle. It was October, and I was at the Pacific Northwest Tech Summit, a rainy mess of a conference at the Washington State Convention Center. Lena was presenting on AI ethics, my wheelhouse, ironically, and I couldn't resist showing up. The place smelled like wet wool and espresso, the crowd a mix of flannel-clad coders and suits dodging puddles. I kept my distance, blending into the back row in a hoodie and jeans, watching Lena take the stage. She wore that black dress again, the fabric shifting as she gestured, her voice cutting through the hum of the room. "AI isn't about power," she said. "It's about responsibility. We don't build tools to play God. We build them to serve people." I was so caught up I almost missed the Q&A. My hand went up again, old habits, and she called on me. "What's your take on balancing innovation with oversight?" I asked, keeping my voice low. She squinted into the crowd, then smiled faintly. "Tough question. We push boundaries, but we don't break trust. It's a tightrope. You just keep walking." I nodded, sinking back, my pulse racing. She didn't know me, but that smile? It hit harder than it should have. The real trouble came after. I was heading for the exit, dodging a pack of startup founders, when I ducked into an elevator. The doors were closing when Lena slipped in, her umbrella dripping on the floor. "Oh, hey," she said, glancing at me. "You again." I froze. Yeah, hi." The elevator jolted to life, and we were alone. Just the two of us in a metal box, the air thick with the scent of rain and her lavender perfume. She leaned against the wall, her dress clinging slightly from the damp, and I had to force my eyes to the panel. Floor 12, 11, 10. Feel like I've seen you before, she said, casual but curious. You go to a lot of these things? Some, I managed, my voice tighter than I wanted. You're, pretty memorable up there. She laughed, soft, real. Thanks, I think. The space felt smaller, her warmth radiating in the cramped box, and my brain screamed at me to say something, anything. Floor 5, 4. Then a grinding screech. The elevator lurched and stopped dead. Great, she muttered, hitting the emergency button. Stuck in Seattle. Figures. I swallowed, my heart hammering. Could be worse, I said, risking a grin. At least the company's good. She raised an eyebrow, smirking. Smooth. For 10 minutes we stood there, trading small talk, her complaining about soggy shoes, me joking about tech conferences being cursed. The maintenance guy's voice crackled through the speaker, promising a quick fix, but I barely heard it. She was close enough that I could see the raindrops on her neck, the way her lips curved when she teased me about my hoodie. It was the most normal I'd felt in years. No billions, no shell companies, just two people stuck in a box. The elevator jolted back to life, and the doors opened on the lobby. See you around, mystery guy, she said, stepping out with a wave. I watched her go, her silhouette fading into the crowd, my chest tight. She didn't know who I was, but she'd seen me, really seen me, for a fleeting second, and it scared the hell out of me. Back in my hotel, I paced the room, rain streaking the windows. Zoe's article burned in my mind. Arjun's sabotage lingered like a bad taste, and that elevator moment wouldn't let go. I'd spent 2 years thinking I could stay invisible, but the cracks were showing. Lena was too big now, too bright, and I was a shadow stretched thin. How long could I keep this up before it all came crashing down? The San Diego Convention Center was still buzzing when I stepped off that stage with Lena Harper, my heart thudding like a bass drum in my chest. It was April 2025, and my 3-year game of hide-and-seek had just blown up in front of a packed auditorium, courtesy of a TechCrunch headline that might as well have been a neon sign. Ethan Carter, the billionaire phantom behind VitalSync's rise. The crowd's chatter followed us backstage, a mix of gasps and camera clicks, and I could feel the heat of every lens on me. I'd spent years dodging this moment, but here it was, raw, real, and way too loud. Lena didn't say much as we slipped into the hallway. Just gave me that calm, curious look I'd seen 100 times from afar. Up close, it was sharper, like she was scanning me for bugs in my code. My hotel's across the street, she'd said, already moving. We'll talk there. I followed, my dress shoes clicking on the tile, the salty Pacific breeze hitting me as we crossed to the Marriott. The lobby was all sleek lines and overpriced coffee, the kind of place where tech bros networked over $12 lattes. She grabbed a black coffee, I snagged a whiskey, and we slid into a booth by the window, the city lights streaking across the glass like a movie set. She stirred her coffee, her fingers steady, and fixed me with those dark eyes. So, Mr. Carter. Ethan, she corrected herself, a faint smirk tugging her lips. 3 years, huh? Horizon Peak, Blue Wave, Dawn Pulse, Nova Core, all you? I nodded, sipping my drink to buy time. The burn steadied me. Yeah, all me. She leaned back, crossing one leg over the other, her black dress shifting just enough to catch my eye before I snapped it back to her face. I don't get it, she said, her tone dry but not mad. You're the Ethan Carter. You could have walked into my office, dropped your name, and owned half my company by lunch. Why hide? I set my glass down, the clink loud in the hum of the bar. Because I didn't want you to see me like that, I said, the words spilling out before I could stop them. I've spent 15 years being the guy everyone bows to or bullshit around. CEOs kissing my ass, rivals waiting for me to slip.
It's all noise. But you? I paused, meeting her gaze. You didn't know me. You didn't care. And that was the only real thing I had left. Her eyebrows lifted, just a fraction, but she didn't interrupt. I kept going, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. I saw you in Austin 3 years ago. You were up there talking about saving lives, not selling hype, and it hit me. You were doing something that mattered, something I'd forgotten how to do. So I threw money at it, sure, but not to control you, to watch you win, on your terms. Lena studied me, her coffee cooling in her hands. Then she sighed, a small, almost amused sound. You're weird, Ethan, she said. But I'll give you this. Those investments? They kept us alive. Hospitals in Ohio, clinics in Mississippi. People who'd be dead without our AI, they're breathing because of you. So yeah, thanks. I smirked, a little of the tension easing. You're welcome, I guess. She smiled, a real one, warm and unguarded, and it knocked the air out of me. I'd seen that smile from a distance at galas and summits, but up close, it was a gut punch. You're not what I expected, she said, tilting her head. I figured whoever was behind this had an agenda. Power, profit, something. But you're just... what? A fan? Something like that, I said, laughing despite myself. A fan with a fat bank account. She laughed too, soft and easy, and for a second, the world shrank to just us. No headlines, no cameras, no billions. Then her phone buzzed, breaking the spell. She glanced at it, frowned, and set it face down. Press is having a field day out there, she said. They're calling you my secret admirer, Silicon Valley's love story of the year. I groaned, rubbing my face. Great. Just what I need. Don't worry, she said, smirking again. I shut it down at the press conference. Told him you're just an investor who likes to stay low-key. No romance, no drama, just the work. I blinked. You already handled it? Yep, she said, sipping her coffee. Right after the keynote. Figured you didn't need the circus. Besides, I've got enough on my plate without tabloids making up fairy tales. Relief washed over me, mixed with something else. Gratitude, maybe. You're good at this, I said, saving my ass before I even ask. It's a talent, she shot back, her eyes glinting. Then she leaned forward, her tone shifting. But I've got a question. I knew someone was out there. Those investments were too perfect, too timed. I just didn't think it was you. Why not tell me? I looked out the window, the San Diego lights blurring into streaks. Because I was afraid, I admitted, quieter now. Afraid you'd look at me like everyone else does. The money, the name, the bullshit. Or worse, that you'd think I was trying to own you. I didn't want to mess up what you had going. It was pure. She didn't say anything for a beat, just watched me. Then she nodded, slow and deliberate. Okay, she said. I get it. But you're out now. No more hiding. So what's next? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. She was right. The game had changed. Before I could fumble an answer, she pulled out her phone and tapped the screen. Come to my office tomorrow, she said, sliding it toward me. Palo Alto, 10 a.m. I've got something to show you. What's that? I asked, curious despite myself. A plan, she said, standing up, and I could use your brain on it. Night, Ethan. She grabbed her coffee and walked off, her heels clicking against the marble floor, leaving me staring after her like a dumbass. That lavender scent lingered, and I couldn't shake the feeling I'd just stepped into something bigger than I'd bargained for. The next morning, I pulled up to Vital Sync's HQ in Palo Alto.
A low-key building off El Camino Real. All glass and concrete, nothing flashy, nothing. Inside, the walls were covered in research papers and whiteboards scribbled with equations, the air thick with coffee and quiet focus. Lena met me in a small conference room, still in black, a different dress, but same vibe. Her hair up, a laptop open in front of her. "Morning," she said, not looking up. "Grab a seat." I did, dropping into a chair across from her. "So what's this plan?" She spun the laptop toward me, a slide deck glowing on the screen. "Vital sync pediatric expansion. We're taking the AI to kids' hospitals," she said, clicking through charts. "Early detection for congenital defects, rare syndromes, stuff doctors miss because they're swamped. I've got the data, the team, the will. But the neural nets? They're a beast. You're the expert. I want your take." I stared at the screen, then at her. "You're asking me to help? Like, officially?" "Yep," she said, leaning back. "You've been in the shadows long enough. Time to get your hands dirty." I laughed, a real one that surprised me. "You don't waste time, do you?" "Nope," she said, grinning. "So, you in?" I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I'm in." She stuck out her hand, and I shook it. Firm, warm, a spark in her grip that made my pulse jump. "Good," she said. "Let's get to work." No drama, no accusations, just the mission. In that moment, I realized she'd known all along what I'd spent 3 years figuring out. It's not about who you are, it's about what you build. And damn if I wasn't ready to build something with her. Zoe Kim's next Wired piece dropped that week. The Phantom steps forward, but it wasn't a takedown. She'd seen the press conference, the collaboration, and spun it into a story about purpose over profit. The circus moved on, chasing fresher drama, and I let it go. Lena and I had bigger fish to fry. 6 months flew by like a blink, and by October 2025, VitalSync wasn't just a startup anymore. It was a juggernaut. Lena Harper and I had turned her pediatric expansion into the biggest healthcare AI initiative in the U.S., rolling out neural nets that could spot heart defects in newborns and rare syndromes in kids before they even showed symptoms. Hospitals from Boston to Bakersfield were on board, and the data was staggering. Thousands of early diagnoses, lives saved before they were even at risk. I'd thrown everything I had into it: money, code, sleepless nights hunched over laptops in Palo Alto. For the first time in years, I wasn't just the guy signing checks. I was in the trenches, and it felt damn good. We were in New York that fall, holed up in a rented office space in Flatiron, a loft with exposed brick and floor-to-ceiling windows, the kind of place that screamed startup chic but cost a fortune. It was a crisp Tuesday morning, the city buzzing below with yellow cabs and coffee carts, the air sharp with that October bite. I ditched the suits for a flannel shirt and jeans, sleeves rolled up, a steaming mug of Dunkin' Donuts coffee in my hand. Lena sat across from me at a beat-up wooden table, her black dress swapped for a sweater and slacks. Still black, of course, because some things never change. Her hair was up, a few strands loose, and she was scribbling notes on a legal pad while I debugged a neural net on my laptop. "Check this," I said, spinning the screen toward her. I tweaked the learning rate, cut the false positives by 6%. Should catch more edge cases now. She leaned in, squinting at the numbers, her elbow brushing mine. "Not bad, Carter," she said, a grin tugging her lips. "You're almost as good as my CTO." "Almost?" I shot back, faking offense. "I'm wounded, Harper." She laughed, that real, unguarded laugh I'd come to crave, and nudged me with her shoulder. "You'll live. Just don't let it go to your head. I've seen what happens when billionaires get cocky." "Ouch," I said, clutching my chest. "Low blow." She smirked, sipping her coffee. Black, no sugar, like always. The room hummed with quiet energy, just us and a couple engineers tapping away in the corner. It was a far cry from the chaos of San Diego 6 months ago, when my secret had blown up under those blinding lights. Back then, I'd been terrified of what she'd think, that she'd see me as some rich creep meddling in her world. But Lena? She'd taken it in stride, turned my confession into a handshake, and here we were, building something bigger than either of us alone. The press had moved on after Zoe Kim's last piece. The Phantom steps forward, painted us as some noble duo chasing impact over ego. Forbes ran a cover story. Carter and Harper, the unlikely alliance, reshaping healthcare. I'd framed it in my office, mostly because Mia, my assistant, insisted it'd humanize me. The circus faded, and we got to work. No more shell companies, no more shadows, just late nights, bad takeout, and a mission that mattered. That morning in New York, we were prepping for a demo at Mount Sinai, a big one, with pediatric specialists flying in from across the country. Lena stood, stretching her arms overhead, and I caught myself staring a beat too long as her sweater lifted just enough to show a sliver of skin. "Nervous?" I asked, dragging my eyes back to my screen. "Nah," she said, dropping into a chair beside me. "Excited. This could change everything for these kids. Give them a shot before the system even knows they're sick." "That's why you're the boss," I said, grinning. "I'd be sweating bullets." She raised an eyebrow. "You? Mr. $70 billion, please. You faced worse than a room full of doctors." "True," I admitted. "But this feels bigger, personal." She nodded, her expression softening. "It is. That's why we're here." The demo went off without a hitch. We stood shoulder to shoulder in a sterile conference room, the smell of antiseptic and whiteboard markers in the air, pitching to a sea of white coats. Lena took the lead, breaking down the AI's stats with that quiet fire of hers, 92% accuracy, real-time alerts, seamless integration. I jumped in on the tech side, explaining the neural net tweaks, fielding questions about scalability. The doctors ate it up, scribbling notes, asking for pilot programs. By the end, we had handshakes and promises of contracts, and Lena's smile, subtle but real, lit up the room. Back at the loft that night, we cracked open a couple beers, Brooklyn Lager, her pick, and toasted over a pile of pizza boxes. "To saving lives," she said, clinking her bottle against mine. "To not screwing it up," I added, and she laughed again, the sound bouncing off the brick walls. We sat on a ratty couch, the city glowing outside, and for a minute it was just us. No titles, no headlines, just two people who'd stumbled into something worth doing. She kicked off her shoes, tucking her feet under her, and I caught that lavender scent drifting off her. It hit me then. This was what I'd been chasing. Not the anonymity, not the thrill of the secret, but this. Being part of something real, with someone who didn't give a damn about my bank account. "You ever think about why you started this?" she asked, out of nowhere, her beer halfway to her lips. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Carter Tech, money mostly, proving I could. "You?" She shrugged, her gaze distant. "Detroit. Saw too many people die because the system failed them. No tech, no time, no chance. Figured I could fix it." "You did," I said, turning to her. "More than you know." She met my eyes, and for a second, something hung there. Not romance, not quite, but a quiet understanding. "You helped," she said simply. "More than you had to." I smirked. "Guess I'm not such a bad partner, huh?" "Not terrible," she teased, nudging me again. "When you're not hiding behind fake companies." "Fair," I said, laughing. "But you're stuck with me now." "Good," she replied. And that was that. Over those 6 months, I'd learned something I hadn't expected. I'd spent years thinking power was money, status, the ability to make a room shut up when I walked in. But with Lena, I saw it differently. Power was building something that lasted, something that didn't need your name on it to matter. She treated me like everyone else. No bowing, no bullshit. And that's what I'd been looking for all along. Not someone impressed by my billions, but someone who cared about what I could do with them. The next week, we were at a smaller summit in D.C., a low-key gig at Georgetown. Lena was up front, talking about the pediatric rollout, still in black, still giving credit to her team before herself. I hung back, sipping a watery coffee, watching her work the room. She caught my eye mid-sentence, flashed a quick grin, and kept going. I didn't need to be up there. She had it handled, but knowing I'd helped get her there, that was enough. Later, as the crowd thinned, I stood by the window, the Potomac glinting under the afternoon sun. Lena walked over, hands in her pockets. "You're quiet today," she said. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," I said, turning to her. "Just thinking. 3 years ago, I was a ghost in your story. Now I'm here. Weird how that works." She nodded, leaning against the frame. "Weird's one word for it, but I'm glad you're not a ghost anymore." "Me too," I said, and I meant it. The story could have ended there. Billionaire steps out, finds purpose, roll credits. But life's not that neat. VitalSync kept growing, and so did we, tackling new projects, new fights. The media lost interest, chasing shinier scandals, but I gained something better. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is show up, not as a name, but as a person. Lena taught me that, and I'd spend the rest of my days trying to live up to it. A year after that quiet moment in D.C., I thought I'd figured it out. Life, purpose, the whole damn thing. By October 2026, VitalSync was a household name in healthcare, its AI humming in hospitals nationwide, saving kids and giving doctors breathing room. Lena Harper and I were a team now, not just partners on paper, but something closer, forged in late-night coding sessions and endless cups of coffee. I'd traded my penthouse view for a simpler loft in Brooklyn, closer to the action, and swapped suits for hoodies most days. At 39, with $70 billion still in the bank, I felt lighter than I had in years. But the thing about light? It casts shadows you don't see coming. It started with a phone call. I was in our New York office, same flat-iron loft, same brick walls, tinkering with a new algorithm when my cell buzzed. Lena's name flashed on the screen, odd for 7 a.m. on a Saturday. "Hey," I answered, leaning back in my chair. "What's up? You never call this early." Her voice was tight, not her usual steady calm. "Ethan, I need you in Detroit, now." "Detroit?" I sat up, frowning. "What's going on?" "Just get here," she said, and the line went dead. My gut twisted. Lena didn't panic. Ever. I grabbed my jacket, texted Mia to book a jet, and was wheels up from Teterboro within the hour. The flight was a blur, the Manhattan skyline fading into clouds, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. VitalSync hacked, a lawsuit, something personal. I downed a black coffee mid-air, the bitterness matching my mood. I landed at Detroit Metro, the air cold and gray, the kind of October chill that cuts through you. Lena met me at baggage claim, her black coat zipped to her chin, hair messy like she'd been running her hands through it. Her eyes were red-rimmed, and that hit me harder than the wind. "Thanks for coming," she said, voice low. "Let's drive." We climbed into a beat-up rental, a Ford Focus, nothing fancy, and she peeled out of the lot, tires squealing. "Talk to me," I said, buckling in. "What's happening?" She gripped the wheel, staring straight ahead. "My mom's sick. Bad. Congestive heart failure, late stage. She's in the ICU at Henry Ford Hospital, same place I worked as a resident. And VitalSync, it missed it."
I blinked, processing. Missed it? How? Her records, she said, her jaw tight. She was in our system, early pilot program, years ago. The AI flagged her as low risk last month. I didn't check it myself. Too busy. Now she's got days, maybe hours, and Her voice cracked, and she slammed a hand on the dashboard. I built this thing to save people, Ethan, not to fail her. I reached for her shoulder, then pulled back, unsure. Lena, this isn't on you. Systems miss stuff. We've seen it before. We'll figure it out. She shook her head, tears brimming but not falling. It's not just that. The hospital's talking lawsuit. They're saying we oversold the AI, put patients at risk. If this blows up, it could tank us. Everything we've built. The car fell silent. Just the hum of the engine and the distant wail of a siren. Detroit rolled by outside, crumbling brick buildings, neon signs flickering in the gloom. I'd faced corporate storms before, but this was different. This was Lena's mom, her city, her soul on the line. Okay, I said finally. We'll fix it, whatever it takes. We hit the hospital, a sprawling concrete maze smelling of bleach and despair. Lena led me to the ICU, her steps quick, her coat flapping. Her mom, Mrs. Harper, lay in a bed surrounded by tubes and monitors, her breathing shallow, skin ashen. She was a small woman, maybe 60, with Lena's sharp cheekbones and a fighter's set jaw even now. Lena sat beside her, taking her hand, whispering something I couldn't hear. I hung back, feeling like an intruder, my hoodie out of place among the sterile white. Hours dragged. I paced the waiting room, guzzling vending machine coffee, digging into VitalSync's data on my phone. Mia texted updates. Press caught wind. VitalSync fails founder's family. Lawyers on standby. I cursed under my breath, then called Ryan Brooks, my old Chicago buddy turned crisis fixer. Need you in Detroit, I said. Shit's hitting the fan. On it, he replied, already booking a flight. You owe me a steak after this. By nightfall, Lena emerged, her face drawn but composed. She's stable, for now, she said, slumping into a plastic chair beside me. Docs say it's a coin toss. I can't lose her, Ethan. You won't, I said, more conviction than I felt. We'll get through this. She looked at me, eyes searching. Why are you here? You don't have to be. I shrugged, leaning forward. Because you called, and because this matters, to you, to me, to everyone we're trying to help. We're in this together, right? She nodded, a ghost of a smile flickering. Right. The next day, Ryan rolled in, all rumpled blazer and caffeine-fueled energy. We set up shop in a hospital conference room, laptops open, pizza boxes piling up. Lena briefed us. The AI had misread Mrs. Harper's old EKG data, buried in a glitch from an outdated integration. It's fixable, she said, voice steady again, but we need to prove it wasn't systemic, and fast. I dove into the code, fingers flying over keys, while Ryan worked the PR angle, spinning a story of transparency. VitalSync faces flaw, vows to fight. Lena handled the hospital, meeting execs in a borrowed lab coat, her presence calm but fierce. We're not hiding, she told them. We'll audit every case, rebuild trust. You've seen what we can do. Don't bail now. By day 3, we had it. A patch for the glitch, a full report for the board, and a public apology that didn't grovel, but owned the mistake. The lawsuit fizzled when Mrs. Harper rallied, her vitals creeping up, and the press softened, running headlines like VitalSync's redemption. I watched Lena at her mom's bedside, reading stats off a tablet, her hand squeezing the frail fingers. You're gonna make it, Ma, she whispered, and I believed her. That night, we crashed at a diner off Woodward Avenue. Neon-lit, sticky booths,
the smell of fries and burnt coffee in the air. Lena sat across from me, nursing a Coke, her coat draped over the seat. "We pulled it off," she said, her voice hoarse but warm. "Thanks, Ethan, for showing up." "Any time," I said, popping a fry in my mouth. "You'd do the same." She smirked. "Maybe, but you're still a softie under all that billionaire crap." "Guilty," I laughed, and she kicked me under the table, light but real. Her sweater hugged her frame, and I caught that lavender scent again, a quiet pull I'd never shake. We weren't some epic romance. Never would be. But there was something there. A bond deeper than I'd had with anyone. She leaned back, her eyes softer now, and I knew I'd follow her into any fight. Back in New York a week later, Vital Sync was stronger than ever, trust restored, contracts renewed, the pediatric rollout humming. I stood on my Brooklyn balcony, the East River glinting below, a beer in hand. Lena texted, "Mom's home, thanks again." I smiled, typing back, "Tell her I expect a rematch at Checkers." The lesson stuck with me. I'd started this chasing shadows, thinking invisibility was power. But real power? It's standing in the light when it's hardest, owning the mess, fixing it, being there. Lena showed me that, and it changed everything. We weren't done, not by a long shot, but whatever came next, we'd face it together. Hey, if this roller coaster from crisis to comeback got you, don't go anywhere. Hit subscribe and drop a comment. What's the toughest fight you've faced, and who'd you want in your corner? There's more stories like this waiting, and I'd love to share them with you. Catch you next time.